Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to Neuroscience versus Advaita Vedanta, the source of consciousness from Swami Tadatmananda. So I'm not sure what's going to be explained here. I know Sadhguru had some discussions with some neuroscience, but I don't know if Swami Tadatmananda here has. So let's go and get started.
For several decades now, neuroscience has been probing deeper and deeper into the human brain to understand its mysteries. Today, researchers are discovering how huge, intricate networks of brain cells, called neurons, are responsible for your ability to see, hear, speak, and remember. Eventually, they will discover exactly how your brain can produce all the functions of your mind. But the fact is, you are more than your brain and its neurons. You're more than the sum of your biological parts, all the cells, tissues, and organs that make up your body. You are a conscious being who is aware of yourself and the world around you. Because of consciousness, you can experience the sweetness of a mango or the fragrance of a rose. Because of consciousness, you have a rich inner life with an amazing range of emotions. Because of consciousness, you can even observe or witness all the activities of your mind, including your emotions. So, in addition to producing mental faculties, how does your brain produce consciousness itself? Well, in recent times, neuroscientists have developed a number of sophisticated theories that attempt to explain this. We'll review some of their theories shortly. So far, none of them have successfully explained how your brain produces consciousness, and such an explanation seems unlikely in the near future. In ancient times, no one considered the brain to be somehow involved in activities like thinking and feeling. The Greek philosopher Aristotle thought that our brains were radiators that cooled the blood circulating through our bodies. In the 17th century, the French philosopher René Descartes thought that the pineal gland, which is located deep inside the brain, was the crucial link that connected our machine-like material bodies to our immaterial conscious souls. By the 19th century, doctors who treated patients with brain injuries understood quite well that such injuries could dramatically affect a person's personality, emotions, and other mental faculties. Around the same time, practitioners of phrenology or craniology made wild claims that our mental traits could be identified by the size and location of bumps on our heads. Since those times, neuroscience has made huge strides in understanding the brain and its 100 billion neurons. Particular regions of the brain involved in sight, speech, memory, balance, and so on are being methodically explored and mapped out in great detail. Brain tissue is microscopically studied to see how neurons are interconnected with each other. The electrical signals that neurons use to communicate are measured either by directly probing the brain or indirectly by using EEG instruments or magnetic stimulation. More recently, functional MRI and PET scans are being used to create highly defined images of neural activity throughout the brain. In the future, new technologies might make it possible to measure the neural activity in your brain so accurately that your innermost thoughts and feelings can be decoded.
I wouldn't doubt that. I think that I think they can map out your brain, and eventually, I think there was a test in MythBusters. It's a TV show. It's a really cool TV show where they have this like an MRI machine that will scan your brain, and they run a couple of tests to see who can fool this machine because they're using it like a lie detector. And what they do is they look at the patterns that activate in your brain. This was a long time ago, so I think it could have improved. I'm not sure, but they did some tests. I guess you answer some questions truthfully or you lie, and I'll see the pattern of your brain. When you lie, you'll see the pattern. If you tell the truth, they'll see a pattern. But they ask a couple of questions so they can get the patterns accurate. I think it failed one of the people. One of the person fooled the machine. I forget what the test was. Again, MythBusters is a TV show in America. It's amazing. It's a lot of, myth busting. So, really practical stuff too. It's really fun and enjoyable TV show. I highly recommend it. But what he's talking about here, I kind of figured, obviously there eventually when we have neural implants into our minds, into our brains, I'm sure they'll be start while we're sleeping in our dreams posting advertisements. It's gonna be kind of crazy.
On the other hand, detecting thoughts and emotions in your brain is not the same as detecting consciousness. Your brain and its neurons generate crucial mental functions like wakefulness, alertness, and attention. But consciousness itself is even more fundamental. How is that so? Consider this. Suppose a human-like robot has sophisticated sensors in its nose and tongue that can perform detailed chemical analysis of anything placed in its mouth. The robot could identify each of the specific chemicals responsible for the taste and smell of a ripe mango. But the robot wouldn't experience the sweetness and aroma of a mango like you would. That kind of conscious experience can take place in your brain, but not in the electronic brain of a robot. So, in the next section, we'll explore how conscious experience, like the sweetness of a mango, can arise in your brain.
Oh man, this is something I definitely want to talk about. It's because it's how we experience life doesn't determine whether you're conscious or not. A person in a coma who cannot experience life is still technically unconscious. It still has a consciousness. The body may be limp, but the body's still breathing with help or not, whatever, It's not able to smell, it's not able to taste, it's not able to see or feel. But consciousness is still there. So to say that the smell of a mango determines whether you're conscious or not would be, I would counter that. Again, the quality of life doesn't determine whether you're conscious or not. You could literally they could literally take your brain out, I guess, and put it in a jar and keep it alive and functioning, and whoever that person is conscious. But experiences nothing. But it's still a conscious being. If you put that brain back into the body, it then be aware of whatever sensors it has. Agree, disagree? Let me know. That's my thoughts so far. piece of paper and write stuff down.
Will scientific research ever locate a particular network of neurons in the brain that are responsible for consciousness itself? Decades ago, some researchers considered this idea, but ongoing studies have completely ruled out the notion that consciousness arises from a single localized source in the brain. All current theories suggest that the source of consciousness is decentralized or distributed. Those theories are highly speculative and extremely difficult to verify. They're also quite complicated, at least for me. Yet, it's really important to understand their basic ideas. So, let me give you a quick overview of the main theories. Bernard Baars describes the origin of consciousness in the brain through his global workspace theory. By global workspace, he means a decentralized network of neurons that functions like a screen onto which various images and ideas are projected. According to Baars, consciousness emerges from the interaction of neurons in that global workspace. Francis Crick received a Nobel Prize for discovering the structure of DNA. Later in his career, he collaborated with a researcher who considers consciousness to be a fundamental property of complex neural networks. Together, they theorized that in a part of the brain known as the claustrum, neurons become synchronized with each other, and their synchronous activity gives rise to consciousness. Giulio Tononi developed a mathematical model of consciousness called integrated information theory. He claims that consciousness is nothing but highly integrated information. According to Tononi, the enormous integration of information in the brain's powerful cerebral cortex gives rise to consciousness. According to the attention schema theory of Michael Gaziano, when the interaction of neurons throughout the brain are filtered by the faculty of attention, a simplified model or representation is created. For Gaziano, that representation or schema is responsible for consciousness. Finally, Robert Penrose is a Nobel laureate in physics who believes that consciousness can never be explained through ordinary physical and mathematical laws. So he postulates the existence of quantum gravity, and he concludes that consciousness is the result of quantum effects, which are thought to occur in the microtubules found inside cells. Okay, that's enough. As I said, all these theories are highly speculative, and none of them are even close to being verified. Yet, they are taken quite seriously by many neuroscientists. Other theories have been proposed by Western philosophers. Some of them suggest that consciousness is an epiphenomenon, a side effect of human evolution. When vertebrates evolved into human beings with huge brains, consciousness might have naturally emerged, perhaps by one of the neuroscience theories we've just seen. Other philosophers, like Daniel Dennett, try to minimize the significance or role of consciousness. They claim that feeling like a conscious being who enjoys the sweetness of a mango is simply an illusion. What you wrongly consider to be subjective conscious experience is actually produced in your brain like all other mental activities. If you don't completely understand all these theories, that's perfectly okay. I don't either. Among scientists and academics, each of these theories have many supporters and probably just as many critics. But for us, what's important is that all these theories share a crucial feature. They all attribute the origin of consciousness to the brain and its neurons. Such theories are called materialist or physicalist. They're physicalist because they accept the existence of matter and energy alone, but they reject the existence of any kind of non-material, non-physical reality. In Advaita Vedanta, consciousness is a non-material, non-physical, fundamental reality. Fortunately, you don't have to be a neuroscientist or a philosopher to understand it properly, as we'll see in the next section.
Okay. So to play devil's advocate, I suppose here, this is something that I see from Western religion or Abrahamic religion, where you ask them to prove God, and it's like, well, God's not real. I mean, sorry, hold on. God is real, but he doesn't exist in the physical material realm. So it's kind of like if I were to say, hey, I have this right here. As a matter of fact, is a unicorn, and you ask me, it's like, well, where is it? Prove it to me. It's like, it's right here. It's non-material. You can't see it. It's right here though. It exists. It's real. And you're like, if you can't see it and you can't prove it, how do I know it's actually real? It's like, well, you just have to accept it. So it's like a faith-based thing, and this is the biggest issue I have with Western Abrahamic religions, is because God to them is not something in the physical realm, so it cannot be proven to be true in terms of the materialistic realm. So it's you have to base it on faith base. And it's kind of the same thing with Advaita Vedanta itself. I mean, we will not, let's see, we cannot deny the fact that consciousness is real. That is absolutely true. But in terms of what Advaita Vedanta, I believe, is trying to say, is that there is only one consciousness which pervades everything. How can we prove that? And he goes to, well, it's, again, consciousness is not something that's, according to Advaita Vedanta, consciousness is not a materialistic thing, so there's no way to measure it, to prove it physically. And he goes back, this is sounding very much a lot like Abrahamic religion, where it's like, well, there's no way to prove it because it's not physical. It's like, and then there's the problem, there's where the problem and lies with me. I cannot, but the thing is, though, that for me is that, well, consciousness is true, that I can believe in. And the fact that I know it argues for the fact that we think we have individual consciousness, which in terms of Advaita Vedanta saying it's not true. We have only one consciousness which pervades everything, pervades all things, time, space, and material, I believe. Yes, essentially. So this is where I've always I think since the beginning, I've understood Advaita Vedanta's stance that there is one consciousness. So when I think about things, I think about that in my mindset. I also have my own mindset, which is where we individually have consciousness, and then that's about it, really. And there's only those two, really. Either, well, unless you don't believe we have consciousness, which would be kind of strange. I don't think anyone necessarily believes that. But let's just leave it simple for the two, that we individually have consciousness, or there is one pervasive consciousness. So whenever I watch Advaita Vedanta videos, I have those two mindsets. But whenever we watch, or whenever I react to Advaita Vedanta, I mostly stay in the one consciousness, because that's how everything has to be understood. So that's the way I kind of look at things. But the individual consciousness is still there, taking information both at the same time, but usually it never crops up because the way things are taught in this works for both for me. The only time there's ever a issue is when it comes up to the one consciousness, which then these both mindset collide. How to get enlightened, they both work in my mind the same, because you can look at it as the individual consciousness as bhakti yoga duality, because that's what bhakti yoga is. Now, can you get into non-duality in bhakti yoga? Yes, you can, but most bhakti yogas are dualities, so that's where the individual consciousness comes into play. But anyways, so I just wanted to point that out. For me, to say that if there's something you cannot prove in I guess in the materialistic realm, it's to me it's very similar to that of religion, where they cannot prove that their God is real because it's not in the materialistic realm as well. I see a lot of similarities in that, but I will say this: I can't we cannot deny consciousness, but we can deny deities or gods, because I've not experienced that gods or deities, but I've experienced consciousness, so that I cannot deny. The only thing I can say is that I have not experienced one consciousness. I can only, so far as I can tell, experience my own consciousness. Much like I'm sure you can experience your own consciousness, but you cannot experience mine. And I was wondering, I was thinking through this, like, what would prove that there is one consciousness? And there was this one experiment that was done where they had three psychics, I think, or mind readers or something, and they gathered in one spot. Another person went somewhere. They don't know where, but at a specific time, that person had to be in one spot for 1 hour. And then during that time, the psychics or whatever they were in three separate rooms drew what they think that other person was seeing. So mind you, the one that's doing the experiment had no idea where that person went. They had no connections to it. At least that's what they say in the experiment. And if they're able to be conscious of what that person was doing at the time and able to draw it out or whatever it was, write it down, that could be proof, I think, for me, that there is one consciousness, because you're able to go between consciousness, I guess. But the thing is, I think in terms of Advaita Vedanta, consciousness doesn't transfer information. So consciousness is unaffected by emotions, thoughts, memories, or anything like that. So that makes it kind of impossible, in my opinion, because the consciousness is unaffected by all these things. It has no retention of memories or anything like that. So to me, that seems impossible to do then at that point. So I don't know. I was just thinking, what could be done to prove there is one consciousness, and I'm not exactly sure yet.
The rishis of ancient India and the great Vedantic scholars who followed never even imagined that consciousness could be produced by the human brain. So it's no surprise that their teachings never directly addressed any physicalist theories, like those of modern neuroscientists and philosophers. But in today's world, scientific advances have given those physicalist theories a lot of traction, a lot of credibility. As a result, those theories can threaten the very foundation of spiritual teachings that say your true self, Atma, is pure consciousness, the light of awareness that reveals or illumines all the activities of your mind.
Hold on. See, to me, that it would not destroy it. It would just change how you look at your true self. Whether your true self is the consciousness, I don't think anyone can deny that. But I guess where it will destroy it is whether there's the one consciousness. But even then, if the methodology of it is true, where we become enlightened in the sense that we're unaffected by the world, we don't suffer, I think that's still very much a benefit to people. The only shift is just that instead of one consciousness, we have our individual consciousness, and to me, there's nothing wrong with that. to me, and this is, I guess I forgot to say earlier, to me, it doesn't matter whether there is only one consciousness or we have individual. The whole point is to get into enlightenment. However, whether you believe in one consciousness or multiple, I don't believe should affect that, because it's not knowing there's only one consciousness or you have an individual conscious should not affect your enlightenment, because I guess there might be some things about, if we all have one consciousness, we don't want to harm other people. It's like, well, no, whether we have one or multiple consciousness, I still don't want to harm people. Harming people is a bad thing. So um, that's not going to prevent me knowing that I have an individual conscious and you have an individual conscious. It's not going to all of a sudden I just want to cause harm to you. No. So again, that's where for me, it would not break it. It would just shift a little bit to what I was already thinking were individual consciousness.
Since this teaching is directly contradicted by current physicalist theories, they should not be ignored or taken lightly. Long ago, teachers of Advaita Vedanta directly addressed the opposing views of other schools of thought, like the dualism accepted by the Sankhyas and the nihilism accepted by Buddhists. But today, the biggest challenge to Vedanta comes not from these ancient schools of thought, but from modern physicalist theories for the origin of consciousness. Fortunately, Vedanta's teachings are so complete and thorough that they can effectively respond to these new challenges. From the perspective of Advaita Vedanta, the basic shortcoming of neuroscience is that it's limited to describing how billions of neurons in your brain interact with each other to produce your thoughts, emotions, and other mental activities. Vedanta, on the other hand, goes a step further, a huge step further, by showing how your thoughts and emotions are known to you, how they're observed by you, how they're witnessed by you. That means, in addition to the mental activities produced by neurons in your brain, there is another factor involved, and that factor is you, the conscious being, the awareful subject who observes every mental object produced by your brain. So, we can say that neuroscience describes the brain, its neurons, and the mental objects they produce, whereas Vedanta describes the very consciousness by which those mental objects are known. And that consciousness is your essential nature, because basically you are a conscious being. In Advaita Vedanta, consciousness is a fundamental reality. Whereas science considers matter and energy alone to be fundamental, the rishis of ancient India considered matter and energy to merely be forms or manifestations of an underlying reality that's even more fundamental. They called that underlying reality Brahman, and they described it as Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Satya means the underlying reality because of which everything exists, the so-called fabric of existence. But Brahman is much more than that. It's also jnanam, intelligence, knowledge, consciousness. Brahman is responsible for the intelligent natural order that governs the cosmos, a universal order that includes all the laws of nature, like gravity, momentum, and so on. Brahman is also responsible for the presence of consciousness throughout the world, including its presence in your own brain, as we'll discuss shortly. Finally, Brahman is anantam, limitless, boundaryless. Since the universe is vast, its source must be more than vast. Its source must be infinite. So, in simple English, Brahman can be called the infinite intelligent fabric of existence. Brahman gives existence not only to the physical universe, but to you and me as well, to our bodies and minds. Brahman is also the source for our consciousness and the consciousness of all sentient beings. Brahman's presence within us as consciousness is called Atma, the true self. And in highly intelligent beings, like you and me, that consciousness becomes manifest as the observer or awareful witness of the thoughts and emotions produced by our brains.
I think I can kind of make a slight, I won't say a counter, but a more along the lines that can still science and what he said will flow together. And what I mean by this is the fact that he said Brahman is the intelligence, kind of like how the rules of the universe. So like how nature grows, how the planets orbit, gravity, like he said, the rules of the universe itself, which includes nature, us, animals, what microorganisms, whatever. Everything follows the rules or the intelligence of Brahman. Why can't consciousness also be that? That once our brain reach a certain level, this consciousness, or it could be the ego, we'll say the ego, to kind of separate it, I guess. This is getting a little complicated in my thoughts. Let me try saying this. Hopefully, I don't confuse you guys. Let's say this. Say there is no consciousness in the world, right? We don't have consciousness. We have what we call the ego, which is something that I know Advaita Vedanta talks about, where we are so closely associated with the ego that we don't realize our true self. Let's just, in this example, say that we don't have our true selves is the ego, and this ego is developed by the natural laws of our body and our brain because of Brahman. Much like how the earth goes around the sun, much like how the trees grow because of the rules of the universe. What if our brain develops this ego that we become because of Brahman's laws? I hope that makes sense. Something that really needs to go a little bit deeper into. Man, I need to write this down and send him an email about this. I'm going to pause the video and write this down. Hold on. Now, again, obviously, if you want to make a counter argument, please do in the comment section below. I'll try to read it, although it'll be difficult because I get a lot of comments. And this is the reason why I wanted to make a members only page so that I'll only release at least one video every month to a maximum, hopefully, of 4 videos every month. And with those just 4 videos and with a limited number of people that can make comments on those videos, it'd be a little bit easier to read and address comments that way. But if everyone subscribes to the members only, oh my gosh, it's going to be difficult. But at least it'll be one video, and I can maintain the comments on one video versus, say, like every day there's a video. It's going to be kind of difficult. So I'm still trying to work that out. I do actually have plans for it kind of coming up. Anyways, I wrote it down, but it's kind of, I hope you understand where I'm trying to come from with that. And it would make sense to me with that understanding is the fact that the intelligence of the universe allows everything to function the way it is without needing, in a sense, consciousness. Consciousness is just a word that we use to explain things, but it's not necessarily how do I say, may not necessarily be what we think it is. So under the assumption that Brahman is true, that it is infinite, that's I have no arguments for there. It's fine. It is everything. Everything is it. It is reality. Again, no issues there. and it's intelligent. And when he explained intelligent, he talks about how gravity, so basically the rules of the universe, we, is there consciousness in gravity? Well, I guess it would have to be. But does it really have to be consciousness in gravity? Can we just say that's just part of the rules? That is part of Brahman's rules in the universe? How the Earth rotates around the sun in its particular distance from the sun, how it has this perfect orbit. That's the reason why we're here, because otherwise, if we're too far or too close, we won't exist. Couldn't that just fall under the intelligence part of Brahman? Whether you call it intelligence or consciousness, it's, to me, it's both one and the same. Call gravity consciousness. Call how the plants grow consciousness, because it's the intelligence. Call how the nails grow in our fingernails or our finger intelligence. But it's all one the same nonetheless. So at this point, whether we call it consciousness or not, it's irrelevant because it is what it is. We're just giving it a name to explain what it does. So, to say, I guess, how our brain develops this consciousness, let's say that it doesn't develop consciousness, but we'll say it develops an ego, and this ego is what, I mean, we could take the literal, not the literal definition, what Swami Sarvapriyananda and Swami Tadatmananda has explained about the ego, the false ourself. Why not let that be true? And it would still be the same in my book. Again, it's probably not going to make sense. It's very a very complicated discussion. Something I don't know if I should have brought up or not, but it needs a lot of explanation. I try to explain it as best as I can, but I'm sure it needs a bit more, and it's just for a separate video. So let's continue.
That consciousness is present in your experience right now as you watch this video, which is, after all, a conscious experience. But even though you already know that you're a conscious being, you might not know that your consciousness is actually the presence of Brahman, the fundamental reality, the fabric of existence. Fortunately, you can discover your true nature through the powerful method of self-inquiry that's taught by Advaita Vedanta. That method has been discussed in many of my other videos, so we won't dwell on it here. Even though Vedantic self-inquiry can lead to the discovery of the true nature of consciousness, it turns out that conventional scientific methods can never lead to that same discovery. Why not? Well, science is based on observation. The observation of worldly objects and phenomena, like looking at the stars with a telescope. But consciousness can never be found by looking through the lens of a telescope or with any other kind of scientific instrument. It can only be found by reversing the direction of your inquiry. Rather than looking for consciousness in the world, you have to look within yourself. You have to use introspection, not scientific instruments, because consciousness belongs to the observer, not to objects being observed. Let me explain. When thoughts and emotions are produced by your brain, your experience of them is said to be private. That means those experiences are only accessible or available to you alone. No one else can feel what you're feeling right now. Neuroscientists can study your brain, and one day they might be able to accurately detect your thoughts and emotions, but they will never be able to observe your personal, private experience. They will never know how it feels to be you, Even if they explain how your brain produces feelings of sadness and perceptions of color, they can never know what sadness feels like to you, or what a particular shade of green looks like to you. Neuroscience can't observe your private conscious experience, nor can it detect or measure consciousness itself. For this reason, neuroscience on its own can't discover or explain the origin of consciousness. Of course, most neuroscientists are really smart, so it's not surprising that at least some of them acknowledge this problem. They admit that they can't directly observe or study consciousness itself. They accept the fact that their research is limited to the brain's intricate neural networks and the mental activities produced by those networks. Neuroscientists call those mental activities the neural correlates of consciousness. It is those neural correlates of consciousness that they actually study, not consciousness itself. Some researchers who understand the limitations of neuroscience try to escape those limitations to better understand the nature of consciousness. We'll discuss their ideas in the final part of this presentation.
The hard problem of consciousness is something that Swami Sarvarpinana has talked about quite a bit. I don't remember if Swami Tadatmananda has or not. Maybe I just haven't watched the videos of his. I guess the only thing I could say about counter, not really counter, but just I guess an argument for this is the fact that if consciousness is something that we cannot observe through observation methods, then how are we to discover it? We say we look inwards, but we still use our physical or materialistic attributes to do it. When we quiet our thoughts, our emotions, and everything, we tone everything out and meditate. We are still just awareness, which is a form of observation, though. At least in my opinion. I don't know if there's a form of observation that's not materialistic. I've not heard him say that. I don't know if the observation of Brahman itself is materialistic or not materialistic. And what I mean by this is like our eyes are materialistic and they observe materialistic things. Our touch are materialistic and they feel materialistic things. Our tongues are materialistic and they taste materialistic things. So our eyes cannot see immaterialistic things. Now, is our consciousness, it's immaterial, but it's able to be aware of materialistic things. So I guess that's the answer right there, kinda, that our consciousness is able to observe the non-materialistic consciousness is able to observe or have awareness of the materialistic things. I don't know how to, materialistic mind, materialistic body, materialistic things, us, or the body. But is it also able to observe unmaterialistic things? Again, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Is that again, our eyes, our touch, our smell, all these things are materialistic, which observes materialistic things. Our consciousness, according to Advaita Vedanta, is not materialistic. So, its observation, is it materialistic or not materialistic? Is it both? Or what? So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say there. I'll do it one more time. Our eyes are materialistic and they can only observe materialistic things. Our eyes are not immaterial and they cannot observe immaterial. Our consciousness is immaterial. What does it observe? immaterial, material, both. I have a feeling maybe I don't know what people will say. It seems very clear that it does observe materialistic things. If that's the case, then it cannot observe immaterialistic things, which then we cannot observe our inside our true selves. But I think people will say both because then it'll be we have proof that it can observe both, or at least one for sure. The materialistic world, our consciousness are completely aware of the materialistic world because we're conscious of the things that we do. And they'll say both because if you look inwards, you're able to observe your immaterialistic self, your true self. I think. Again, I don't know. Again, these are just they seem very complicated questions, and if you have an answer, please leave it in the comments below. I will hopefully I get an email and try to read that. But it's at least to me it seems very complicated, and trying to understand it to make it make sense so that I can understand it. And hopefully someone out there is not going to say it doesn't have to make sense. Like, no, it has to make sense for me. It has to make logical sense. um, Otherwise, if I guess I'm too logical a person. If it doesn't make logical sense, it probably won't work out for me because it's just I can't wrap my head around it, and therefore I might as well give up at that point. Unless there's a way to make it make sense, and that's what I'm trying to do. Oops. But yes.
The hard problem of consciousness is an expression coined by a philosopher named David Chalmers. He uses the expression to describe the apparently insurmountable obstacles that prevent neuroscientists from directly observing or studying consciousness. Much like in Advaita Vedanta, Chalmers differentiates the objective existence of thoughts and emotions from your subjective conscious experience of them. He says, why should physical processing in your brain give rise to a rich inner life at all? It seems unreasonable that it should, and yet it does. If any problem qualifies as the problem of consciousness, it is this one. Having recognized this problem, Chalmers himself proposes an alternative to the physicalist worldview, the view that accepts only matter and energy as being fundamental. Chalmers says that consciousness is another fundamental reality that exists in addition to matter and energy. According to this theory, consciousness is a natural feature or property of the universe, along with matter and energy. This theory is called panpsychism, and it's been around for a long time. Yet Chalmers uses it very skillfully to explain how consciousness might simply be a natural property of brain matter that enables it to produce subjective conscious experience. But many knowledgeable critics argue that panpsychism is merely a philosophical concept and not a legitimate scientific theory. They reject it because it can't be experimentally tested by scientific methods. As we discussed before, consciousness itself can't be scientifically detected or measured. Panpsychism resembles Advaita Vedanta in some ways, but in fact, the two are quite different. How? Panpsychism is a kind of dualism. It accepts two fundamental realities: the physical reality of matter and energy, and the non-physical reality of consciousness. Advaita Vedanta, on the other hand, is a non-dualistic teaching. It accepts only one fundamental reality, Brahman. In Advaita Vedanta, matter and energy are considered to be simply forms or manifestations of Brahman, and not independent realities. In addition to David Chalmers, other modern philosophers have used a variety of strategies trying to address the hard problem of consciousness. Some of them have resorted to idealism, an ancient philosophy that's still studied today. Idealism accepts only consciousness as a fundamental reality, and it rejects the reality of matter and energy. Other philosophers theorize a single fundamental reality that's responsible both for the physical world of matter and energy, as well as the non-physical reality of consciousness. This theory is known as neutral monism. Like panpsychism, idealism and neutral monism have some similarities with Advaita Vedanta, but they also have many glaring differences. Further, they're not widely accepted, and they have no completely satisfactory solution to the hard problem of consciousness. Okay, this has been a very intense and challenging discussion. If you're still watching this video, you should be congratulated for your patience and dedication. I actually avoided making this video for several years because I was intimidated by the complexity of the theories we've discussed here. But after a lot of study, it became clear to me that none of the theories can really threaten the validity of Advaita Vedanta. Why? Because the scientific and philosophical methods they use all suffer from their own limitations. On the other hand, Advaita Vedanta is free from those limitations because it's neither a science nor a philosophy. Vedanta is a powerful method of self-inquiry that can lead you to discover your true nature. And that inquiry is not based on scientific observation or on philosophical speculation.
I can 100% agree with that. Yeah, although Sadhguru does say that, yoga is, I believe yoga is scientific. Yes and no. The fact that there is a methodology to it, that if I do believe that majority of people, if they do it, will achieve the goal, but I think there are going to be some people out there who won't. I don't know if that necessarily discounts it as being scientific per se. But I do believe it to be less of a science and more of a philosophy. I don't know if philosophy is the right word when it says philosophical. But I think it's more like a method or a philosophy, really, where there's no one true way to achieve enlightenment or to discover one true self. There are many methods. There's the 4 different yogas that Advaita Vedanta follows: Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. There are many more Kundalini Yoga. There is just many more other yogas and teachings out there. Buddhism, Jainism, even the Abrahamic religions, because they follow a Bhakti Yoga style. So there are many ways to reach enlightenment. There's not one method to reach there, and that's where the problem of it being, can't really say it's scientific, because if you follow one method, no matter who does it, should be able to achieve the same goal. And if it can't be done that way, then it's not scientific. That's the reason why scientific is it's limited, but there is a reason for it. It's because you cannot say that. How do I say this? If it cannot be repeated, it cannot be reliable. I guess, and that's science has to be, I guess, reliable. I think, meaning that no matter how many times you do it, no matter you have to obviously follow the same path, and if by following the same path you receive the same results, then it is scientific per se. Don't get me wrong. I think some people can make an argument. It's like, well, if you do the same thing over and over again, you should end up being with the same results, which is true. And sometimes, I don't know. I don't know what, like. There could be some change to it. Anyway, I don't want to think about that argument right now. It's complicated. But anyways, yeah, science tends to be very repetitive, and no matter how many times you do it, the result should always be the same. There is no randomness to science. And if you look at that as the limitation, to me that's perfectly fine. That means it's reliable. That if you do it, it's guaranteed to happen that way. And if it doesn't happen that way, that means it's that method is not scientifically proven. There's something wrong with the method. It's not a scientific method.
It's based on your own conscious experience.
I kind of feared this would be a very long video, but it is something that's very interesting and something to really think about. Again, regardless of what your thoughts are and where or our consciousness come from, whether it's the Brahman Atman itself or whether we have our individual consciousness, to me, the most important thing is to reach enlightenment. How you reach that, it's up to you. That's that being the most important. Whether you believe that every single individual being is an individual consciousness, that's perfectly fine with my book. Because I mean, you look at Buddhists who are, well, according to him, it's nihilist, and I'm sure some of them reach enlightenment and are not following Advaita Vedanta. You have people following Advaita Vedanta who are reaching enlightenment. You have people who are Bhakti Yoga, which believes in duality, and they've reached enlightenment. So there are many methods to it. Some of them don't even believe in the one consciousness. So this is the reason why, like I said, that it doesn't matter whether you believe in one consciousness or not. The whole point is to reach enlightenment, and how you reach that is, well, different for everyone. For me, do I believe everyone has their own individual consciousness? Yes, I don't believe anyone can deny that. But are those individual consciousnesses actually one consciousness? I don't know. I have no proof of that. The only proof I have is my own consciousness, and that's it. I don't even know if you're really conscious or not. You could be a computer programmer for all I know, or I don't know, a non-conscious thing talking to me or watching this video. I don't know. Maybe no one's watching this video. All the numbers that are coming up in the things below, maybe it's all fake. This world's made for me, in this illusion. I don't, I don't believe that, but. So anyways, regardless of what you believe in terms of the consciousness, the most important thing is to get enlightenment. How you reach that's all up to you. Whatever works best for you. I mean, I guess an interesting question here would be, if you're a follower to Advaita Vedanta, do you believe Buddhists who I don't think believe in Advaita Vedanta can get enlightenment? If you do, would that contradict Advaita Vedanta? Because I don't know. Would it contradict it? Like, if there's another method out there that's separate from your own, where they receive enlightenment, does it contradict your belief in terms of Advaita Vedanta, if you believe in that, or like Buddhism and Jainism? To me, I guess because there's many ways to reach enlightenment, that it doesn't matter what you believe, just as long as you reach enlightenment. Now, I'm not saying be a horrible person. No, absolutely not. Everything still applies in terms of being a good, decent human being. But how you reach enlightenment, whether you believe there is one consciousness or there is no consciousness, or maybe everything is real or everything is false, it's up to you. Anyways, this is my reaction to Neuroscience versus Advaita Vedanta from Swami Tadatmananda. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next vid. Ooh, I said it all in one word. Whew.